Your way to the seats. Wrap up those final drinks. Think of your questions for Daryl as we are going to have a Q&A session at the end here. I'm not going to do all the heavy lifting. We're going to let you guys do some of it to wrap this thing up. Daryl, it's nice to get out amongst the people again.
I know, right?
You know, aren't you tired a little bit of the virtual?
I am. It was kind of odd last year because we started the season in Washington and there was no fans, and then we were in Dallas week 2, and Dallas was one of the teams that was pushing it. We went back to no fans in week 3, and then we were back in Dallas week 4, and it was just for us. The energy that's in the stadium, generated by the fans, helps us in the broadcast booth.
Well, and for us today, I think that's why I wanted to highlight that. It's so nice to have you guys show up here and be a part of this, because it is so much more fun when you guys are in the audience. And then Tim Kalishaw, saw you just sneak into the second row there, buddy. Just casually sitting in the audience. Oh, okay. I should have him just come up here and do my job, because I feel like he would do it better. Good to see you, bud. Am I going to see you out at training camp?
The second week.
Second week, all right. Is that when Jerry's having his party?
But
free food. You get free food at Nobu. All right, I think we've got a couple more stragglers here, and then as soon as we get a few more in the seats, we will start this thing. What's everybody drinking tonight? Beer, cocktail, wines? Vodka, all right. We're gonna have some fun here tonight.
Can't wait to hear those questions.
I know, it's just a Thursday.
Excuse
wow.
me?
I remember when I used to drink a lot of vodka on Thursdays. Easy, good to see you. Where's your wife? If y'all don't know, Kelly and Dawn over here, they are Jerry Jones and the Jones family personal photographers. So if there is a Cowboys event, you typically see them at the stadium, and you guys have got an amazing scrapbook, I would imagine, over the years. Yeah. All right, well, I think we've got enough people in the seats here. Thank you guys so much for showing up. We want to obviously thank Insperity, Tower Club, and Thuzio for helping us put these events on. I always love them because I grew up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and as a journalist, of course, you are supposed to be objective, and I am, Tim. But when you grow up here and your love for football is the result of watching teams like the Dallas Cowboys, and I, of course, was in, I don't want to tell you what years I was in when the Cowboys were making their push and creating a dynasty, but you sort of develop a love for the game, and notably, obviously grew up with some of these guys in the jerseys and underneath the helmet. So when you guys come here, DeMarcus Ware, a couple of you were here for his event. I learned something too, so I hope you guys walk out of here and learn something as well. Daryl, I don't think a lot of people in this audience need me to introduce you, but I will for those of you that don't. Daryl Johnston played fullback for the Cowboys, drafted in the second round in 1989 out of Syracuse. Heavily involved in the Cowboys' 3 Super Bowls, 2 Pro Bowls, and that fullback position in the Pro Bowl, a result of how well you did at the position in the league. Thank you for taking time and showing up here at the Tower Club with us today. How are you?
I'm great. My pleasure to be here. Like you said, excited to just be able to do a live event. So excited for tonight.
Well, you know, I always, like I said, I love to ask questions that I uniquely don't know the answers to. And I am fortunate enough as a result of what I do for a living to have resources to ask those questions so I don't sound completely dense when I get guys like you on the stage with me. One of my questions was, for years, we've just literally called you Moose.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, where did the nickname Moose come from? Now, nobody spoil this, Tim, but raise your hand if you know how Daryl got his nickname. Okay, all right.
That's crazy.
So I picked up the phone and I reached out to one of my former colleagues, Babe Laufenberg, who of course played backup quarterback here in Dallas. And I said, just out of curiosity, how did Moose get his nickname? Did it start in middle school, high school? A lot of these names stick. He's like, I gave it to him. Do you want to share that story, Daryl?
Yeah, absolutely. So Babe and I were teammates for 2 years together. And as practice started, you would go off into your individual groups. So the offensive line would get together and work on drills. The wide receivers would get together and work on drills, the tight ends, the quarterbacks. And the running backs, we were at the very far end of the field. And then when individual period was over, we would come back together and do group work. So you bring all the individual groups together, and then we'd function as an offensive unit. And one day, Babe Laufenberg, at that time, even my backup fullback was 5'10", 240. I was 6'2", 245, and everybody else was kind of in that 5'8", height, 205, 215, and so we're always jogging back into the group, and Babe one day said, he goes, when you guys come jogging back in to join us, he goes, you look like a moose walking in a field of deer. So from now on, I'm going to call you Moose. And it was something that got kind of kicked around the locker room for a while, and then Brad Sham heard about it, and Brad Sham took it to the radio, and then Troy was in a production meeting with John Madden, and when you're the quarterback, you get asked for every week to do a production meeting with the commentating group. And John Madden was with us virtually the entire season. So, Troy was, just frustrated because, John, we've met 4 weeks in a row. There's nothing more I can tell you. There's nothing new. So the one week, John came, he said, hey, you got anything new? He goes, you know what, actually this week I do. He goes, we're going to turn the moose loose this week a little bit. And he goes, you're going to what? He goes, oh, I'm sorry. Daryl's actually he's a part of the game plan. He's got a nice little package that we put together for him to take advantage of some of the things that the team does. And he goes, but what did you call him first? He goes, oh, Moose. And John Madden used the word Moose during the broadcast, and then I was Daryl no longer from that point on. So,
isn't it crazy because now you've been able to not only play the game but announce the game as a broadcaster? Did you back then realize how iconic John Madden was or his effect on the game?
I did not. I remember from the Miller Lite commercial. Hey, wait a minute, I'm not done yet. What he did was create an industry for all of us to be able to benefit from, because you really kind of had to have an inside track at that point. Back prior to John, it was the commentators meeting with the PR department, and they would talk to the PR department, and they would tell them everything that went on that week. John got into broadcasting and sat down with the PR department. He's like, why am I talking to them? I want to talk to the players and the coaches. Those are the people that have the information. So, we all know that John didn't like to fly, and he had the Madden Cruiser. So John was in town earlier than most groups were prior to that, and John turned it into a craft. And we've all benefited from that. So, it's been tweaked and moved, but John is the first person to really kind of come in and study film and ask questions and why are you doing this, and just really kind of elevated the information that you're able to give to the audience. And that's one of the great things that I learned from Dick Stockton. I mean, I've been blessed to work with some great people in my career. And, Dick Stockton was my play-by. Kevin Harlan was my first year at CBS, but Dick Stockton was my guy at Fox for 6 years. And I'll never forget, there was one time when I got out of my lane and we went to commercial, and Dick just said, hey, I'm going to give you something that's really easy to remember, and it's going to be really beneficial to you. I'm the who and the what, you're the how and the why. He goes, you got a little bit into the what on that last one? That's me. He goes, I won't do the how and the why, but you can't do the who and the what. And so I've always been able to stay within those parameters, and that's the knowledge that we bring. We bring the how and the why to the viewer, and that's what John did originally. And he took broadcasting and put it at a level that what was previous was unrecognizable. I don't know if you've ever gone back and listened to a broadcast from prior to John. It's just they're telling you what you just saw. Well, that's great, but I just saw that. Yeah, I know he ran for 7 yards around the right side. John tells you why that play was successful, or during the course of the week, I watched film and I thought that this was going to be a matchup that would be beneficial. So there's just so much background story to what he was bringing to the broadcast.
At the Star in Frisco, they have a wall that has all of the Cowboys commentators at a national level, and it is fascinating how many of you have, after your playing career, have had so much success at the national level. Why do you think that is? I mean, obviously there's a lot of personalities in Dallas.
Yeah. It was kind of on-the-job training for us. It was bizarre during our run. I mean, Mark Tuinei and Dale Hellestrae had a radio show called Snapper and Pineapple. You know, he was a long snapper, and Mark Tuinei was a left tackle from Hawaii. So it was Snapper and Pineapple. You know, and they got a rating. I mean, they got her. I mean, Tui is one of the funniest. He was one of the funniest people you'd ever meet, and Dale Hellestrae was really, really good too. We were on radio, we were on TV, and you got comfortable being in front of a camera. You got comfortable being asked a hard question. And I remember with the local media one time, you know, I came in after a game that we lost, and I'm like, you know, why are you guys only here when we lose? Why don't you come to my locker when we win? You know, you guys are never here if we win the game. They said, you're the only one who will tell us an answer that's honest and makes sense. So, you know, to me, that was very flattering. So, you know, back then, you know, they had NFL Europe. So that was kind of the testing ground, the proving ground of what you wanted to do. And when I hurt my neck the first time, a rumor had got out during Super Bowl week. When you have the 2 weeks in between the championship game and the Super Bowl, a rumor had gotten out that I was going to retire. And, you know, I came home one day and, you know, the old-fashioned answering machine, I had 14 messages on my phone. I never have 14 messages on my phone. And everything was, it was networks calling, hey, we heard you're going to retire. Any interest in becoming a broadcaster? You know, so you call everybody back and you say, you know, listen, I'm very flattered. But what I would love to do is be on the field when Emmitt Smith breaks Walter Payton's record. So I'm going to go back and try and keep playing. Well, when I hurt my neck the second time, there was not 14 messages on the answering machine. You know, I had to call everybody else and say, hey, you remember a couple of years ago you asked me? So it was weird. At that time, there was not a lot of movement in the industry, so there wasn't a lot of spots open. So the only thing that was really available for me was a partial schedule with CBS. So I didn't work until week 6. I think I was only going to do 10 games that year. And we went out, and my group was the 7th team, maybe the 6th team. So I had guys who were BAs and ADs on big crews that had cycled all the way back down to become producers and directors. So they're working their way back up the ladder. And my first play-by-play guy is Bill McAtee. And we're doing a game in San Diego, and I'm like, this is fantastic. I mean, how much fun is this? And after the game, I get a call from CBS, and they're going to shift everything. You know, that year, gosh, I'm going to go blank on his name. Cincinnati Bengals head coach Sam Weish, thank you. Sam Weish had a surgery, and during the course of the surgery, they hit one of the nerves that controlled his vocal cord. So his voice became very gravelly, and it was hard for him to speak. So CBS was in the process of trying to figure out what to do with Sam. They gave him a partner. They brought guys from the studio out. And the game that week was a game, Seattle versus San Diego. There was a couple of cheap shots. I was able to get on my soapbox a little bit. And I got the call Monday from my producer, and he said, hey, he goes, you're going to go take Sam's spot. You're going to be on the number 3 crew. And the rest of the year, you're going to go out. You just want to let you know that, you know, I had a great time with you. I was only 1 week, but boy, I had a lot of fun. I'm like, I don't want to go. He goes, what do you mean you don't want to go? He goes, you're going. And he goes, you don't understand, these opportunities don't come along very often. So we did the rest of the season. And the great thing about it was that year, high definition television was coming in. So we did a supplemental broadcast for Thanksgiving, the AFC Championship game, and the Super Bowl. So I did the Super Bowl, Giants, Ravens down in Tampa Bay, my first year doing broadcasting. I mean, it was unbelievable. And in Tampa, at Super Bowl, Rudy Martzke has a big party every year with all the media that's there. So we get an opportunity to go to the party, and there's Ed Gorin, who was working at Fox at the time with David Hill. And I had interviewed with Fox, and I went up to Ed and I said, hey, Ed, I said, no big deal, but just want to know why, you know, you never followed up on anything. I mean, you sent me to NFL Europe for 3 weeks. I did 3 games. You made me do 1 more game in NFL Europe. And then I never heard from you guys again. I said, did you not like it? Is there something I can get better at? He goes, no, that's me. He goes, running backs are terrible announcers, terrible announcers. Just go back and look at the history. They're all natural runners. They don't have any insight. They don't study. They're terrible. And I said, that's where you made your mistake, Ed. I said, I'm not a running back. I'm a fullback. I said, for me to stay on the field, I have to know everything. It's the only way I can stay on the field and play. He goes, well, don't worry about it. He goes, because we're bringing in Aikman, and you're going to be paired with Aikman. You're going to work with Stockton. We're grooming Troy to take over for John because we know we're going to lose John. He had this whole plan mapped out, and he told me about it at Rudy's party. I said, well, I have a contract with CBS. He goes, they signed you for 1 year with no option. He goes, you're already signed with us. It's all done. Don't worry about it. We'll see you at seminar.
And you are one of my favorites that calls these games, but of course what you're known for is your play on the football field. And as we talk about Jimmy Johnson getting ready to go into the Hall of Fame this year, I have to ask you about Emmitt Smith's Hall of Fame speech. What did it mean? I actually played it back today. If you haven't watched it, go back to 2010. He asked Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin to stand up first, and of course Michael is over there bawling his eyes out as he always does. But then he singles you out to stand up. And he talks about the sacrifices that you made to put your body on the line to help him achieve a dream that he had, which was to beat Walter Payton, to have the most rushing yards ever, and he did it. What did it mean to you to have that moment frozen in time, but have someone acknowledge your efforts on the football field?
It was amazing because I thought he had Troy and Michael stand up because they're up on stage with him. So, you know, well, you can't find them or anything like that. They're up here. Hey, can you guys stand up and acknowledge? And then Daryl Johnston stand up, and I'm there with my son Aiden, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this all about? And I stand up, and yeah, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable the words that he said, and it's funny because we've always tried to explain our relationship, and that day he described it perfectly. You treated me like I was your little brother, and I was back home last weekend, and it's probably the first time I've seen my little brother since 2018. We don't see each other as much as we want to, but as soon as we do, we pick up right where we left off. You know, Emmitt was like my little brother. You know, I took care of him. You know, you couldn't touch him. So, you know, just that one phrase to me meant the world because it did also strike that connection where we went beyond teammates. And people talk about football as being your second family, and a lot of people talk about it, but that group, that was a family. I mean, we transcended teammates, and we transcended friends, and we became family. And Emmitt and I were brothers. That and when he broke Walter's record, you know, that one might have gotten me a little bit more because that was like right in the moment. And it was hard that week because, you know, I had told Ed, I said, you know, I want to be there when Emmitt breaks the record. And so I called him up that week and I said, hey, you know, can I switch to the Dallas game? And he's like, absolutely. He goes, we're going to do some special things for you while you're there. You know, we think this is going to be a great opportunity to catch a really unique moment. So, you know, we do the interviews and Chad Brown, the outside linebacker for the Seattle Seahawks, walks in, you know, the door opens and I'm sitting there, he goes, oh, so you think he's going to break the record this week, and that's why you're here. And I said, well, you can always prove me wrong. He goes, do you know he needs like 94 yards to break the record and he hasn't run for more than 60? I said, it looks like I'm a week early then, doesn't it? But you know, the start of that game, Emmitt was he was on. I mean, he looked different that game than he had done earlier in the season. And from a scheduling standpoint, I don't think everybody remembers this, but the following week they were playing in Detroit, the home of Barry Sanders. How anticlimactic would that have been? It was great to be there. They had me wired. Hey, they're getting close, or Emmitt's getting close. We're going to move you down to the sideline, and I had a microphone like this on, and I could move around. And I mean, as soon as I get down to the field, he loses 3 yards. He loses 4 yards. I said, I better go back up to the booth, or you know, we're going to be at negative yardage. And then he breaks off the run and he breaks the record. And you know, we're there, and my producer is in my ear, and he's screaming at me. He goes, "You got to go talk to him. You got to go talk to him." I said, "He's with his wife. He's with his family." I said, "The time will be right." He goes, "Well, what do you think we brought here for? What do you think you're wearing a microphone for?" He goes, "This is a moment. This is a moment." I said, "I'm not going to force the moment." And we just kind of sitting there talking, and then all of a sudden, from about me to you away, everybody just kind of parts, and we're able to make eye contact. And then, you know, the embrace, and I've got the mic on, and so everything he's saying, and he's crying, and then I start crying. So.
And the producers are crying because the moment they wanted happened.
Yeah. I should have trusted you. I knew you'd know when the moment was right. But that one was tough because it was just such a roller coaster of emotions going into that one. The Hall of Fame caught me completely off guard. But it meant the world to me to see the emotion that he had there.
How cool is it that this year, because of COVID, we're going to see Drew Pearson go into the Hall of Fame and Jimmy Johnson? What is it about Jimmy, though, when I talk to guys like Michael Irvin and Troy Aikman? One of my favorite stories Michael told me was when you guys wouldn't win a game, you didn't get meals. So you wanted to win or else you're starving on the plane ride home. And Tony Casillas told me to ask you a story about in a preseason game when special teams played like trash, about what the assignment was the next day, and ask you if you remember that. He actually did a podcast today, so I'm plugging Tony, where he talked about some of the things that Jimmy did to motivate his players. Do you remember that? About you guys running?
I don't remember the special teams one, so it's probably bad, and I've tried to erase that from my memory. But yeah, he was really hard, but he was fair, and that's really all you can ask for. I mean, if you do your job, you're going to be fine. If you don't do your job, you're going to be in trouble. And I can work in that environment. You know, it's kind of how my dad was. That's my college coach was friendlier than Jimmy was, but still really rigid like that. And you've heard Troy say this a lot. Jimmy did not like playing that role. I mean, Jimmy likes to have fun. He likes to enjoy the people he's around. And you know, when he said that, I would go back and I'd watch, you know, some of the film clips, and you know, sometimes it doesn't seem natural that he's doing that. It is calculated, and this is just what he believes he has to do, you know, at the time. So whether it was the asthma field, whether it was cutting John Roper in a special teams meeting, Curvin Richards fumbled the ball in the last game of the regular season, and we were up 14 points. It got a little tight against Chicago, but we were in control. But he cut him after the game, and we went on to win the Super Bowl. You know, people, well, he just got cut. I said, yeah, he just got cut, but you know, he didn't get a playoff share. He didn't get a ring. He didn't get the joy of being together with the teams through that run. You know, Jimmy had some classic moments where you knew what was going on. And as long as you understood that if you do your job and take care of your business, everything's going to be fine. And there was one time, it might have been, I don't know how close it was to when everything fell apart, but I was a free agent the year that Jimmy left. And I was at Valley Ranch, and I was in the locker room. It was in February, and Jimmy was cutting through the locker room as I was going into the training room. And he goes, hey, I just want you to know everything's going to be all right. You know, Al Davis he's a big fan of yours. Al Davis was the owner of the Raiders at the time. Al Davis is a Syracuse grad. Al Davis would always come and say hello to me before we had wars with the Raiders in training camp for 3 days. You know, Al was a big advocate for me, and Jimmy told me that. And Jimmy told Al, and now Al's going to tell Jerry, but Jimmy told Al he doesn't put up great numbers, but he will win us 1 or 2 games every year with something that he does during the course of the game. And there's not many people you can say something like that about. And he told Al Davis that. And you know, I was floored, you know, because Jimmy and I didn't have a very communicative relationship. I didn't even know what he thought about me. So for him to say that about me, you know, meant the world to me, because Jimmy's one of those guys that all you want him to do is respect you as a football player. That's all I wanted. I wanted his stamp of approval of me being a tough physical football player. And when he said that to me, it meant the absolute world to me. And then Jimmy left, probably less than a week later. It comes on TV, and it's all falling apart, and he's leaving, and I'm like, what? What? We just connected. Everything's good. So.
Why do you think the Cowboys, we've been through a lot of coaches, Chan Gailey, Jason Garrett, Mike McCarthy. Why do you think it's been hard to replicate the success that team had? Because a lot of people forget 89, 90, those weren't great years, no. But then you were able to create a dynasty. What was it that Jimmy did, and maybe it was the team did, that allowed them to win that the Cowboys haven't quite been able to duplicate since?
He's always been underestimated as an evaluator of talent. I got into some of the front office stuff the last couple of years with the Alliance of American Football and the XFL, and seminar in LA when we get ready for the season, you know, everybody's there. You know, I think everybody thinks that we see each other all the time when we work for Fox. Well, hey, how's Howie doing? I haven't seen Howie since August. You know, Howie sits in the booth, I'm out on the road. So I get to see Jimmy once a year, and I always pick his brain, and he gave me some great information. He goes, just, you know, put the guys in the order that you believe they should be in. He goes, you know, you understand the game, and then if you've got your list and you start it, and all of a sudden you're watching film, and here comes a guy. If he needs to be at 4, then put him at 4. You know, don't just make sure you slot him and you get him the right way, and then you don't listen to anybody. I mean, for him to take me in the second round, you know, like Jane said, I mean, the fullback position is not a glamorous position. It's not a position that you'd think somebody would go spend a second-round pick on. But Jimmy, I think, coming to Dallas, had a style of play in mind. We're going to be fast on defense and create turnovers, and we're going to be physical on offense, and we're going to control the clock on you. And Jimmy always wanted tough, smart players, so I fit that role. You know, it was something I always took a lot of pride in, was my grade after every game. So, you know, I had the toughness, I had the intelligence, so I knew there was a chance. But, you know, my draft day was the most ridiculous thing in the world, because going into it, I know exactly where I'm going. Don Shula has already said, we're taking the kid from Syracuse in the second round. So I'm at my apartment. The Dolphins were my favorite team as a kid growing up. I'm like, this is going to be a blast. You know, I got everybody here. Well, now all of a sudden, Lewis Oliver, who was a safety from the University of Florida, starts dropping in the first round. I mean, Lewis should have gone top 15. Why not? You're at 16, 17. Well, Miami trades their second and third round pick to move back into the first round to take Lewis Oliver. So now everybody's like, well, what's going to happen now? I said I had a really good workout for Washington. You know, I feel good about it. A really, really good workout. Washington trades their second and third round pick to get Gerald Riggs from Atlanta. Everybody goes, well, what happens now? I said, we may be here all day. I have no idea. And when I got the call from Gil Brandt, it blindsided me. I mean, it was unbelievable, because Tony Wise and Dave Campbell were coaches at Syracuse who are now on the staff in Dallas, and they came up to work out everybody who was going to be in the draft at Syracuse. But it's Tony and Dave. You know, we didn't know exactly what was going on at the time, and you know, I had a good workout, but you know, I had no idea I was on Dallas's radar. And I think a lot of people forget they traded their first pick in the second round to the Raiders so the Raiders could take Steve Wisniewski, and then they moved back in the second round and then took me with that pick because Jimmy felt it was a little high to take me at the top of the second, but he was very comfortable taking me in the second half of the second round, and that was the greatness of Jimmy. Jimmy's the one that created the value in the draft. When you're going to do a trade, he's able to do, you know, the plus minus thing and see if the value sets the right way. As a college coach, he brought a lot of good stuff to the evaluation process.
Can Jerry, the GM, get the sort of roster that Jimmy had?
No.
No.
No. Jerry is too busy with everything else that's going on, running an organization. Not only running an organization, but running the most valuable organization in the world when it comes to the sporting industry. More than Manchester City, more than anybody. I mean, it is the Dallas Cowboys, and it's been that way for years in the Forbes magazine. So you can't create that and be able to build a roster at the same time. So I've had the opportunity to be there when they're going through the process, to watch Will McClay, Stephen Jones, and Jerry Jones, and the whole scouting and personnel department work together. But those three in particular, with Jason Garrett at the time, and now Mike McCarthy, go through the process is actually pretty interesting. And Will McClay has got it down because Jerry is so busy with so many other things in the organization, and then lots of things outside the organization, that he can show Jerry a one-pager on a guy that's color-coded where Jerry can just kind of look at it in a snapshot and know exactly where that guy should be slotted. And Steven has actually now really kind of asserted himself. And we all know the story, right? I mean, Jerry's going to take Johnny Manziel. I mean, he is taking Johnny Manziel.
I remember it very vividly. Zach Martin's right there.
Takes the paper out of his hand and gives him Zach Martin's name and says, stay true to the board. Stay true to our board. And I mean, that is where the whole process has shifted a little bit. Is Steven is now very comfortable asserting himself on the key decisions, and that's made a huge difference. I think they've drafted well. Free agency is a whole different animal, and they've really struggled there. Number one, they don't have a lot of money to spend, but the big thing is you have to understand, we would always say when a guy would go somewhere, you're like, why is he going there? He doesn't fit. I mean, why would you sign him? Mm-hmm. And so the teams that are really good in free agency are the teams that recognize that, and 2 years later, that guy will not have numbers. He's going to be a little bit heavy on their salary cap, and you can go in and steal him if you liked him and he fits your system. So evaluating the free agency market as opposed to the draft are a little bit different because you got to take some other things into consideration. But I think Dallas has gotten much better under Will McClay as the general manager.
Dak Prescott, when I talk to a lot of Cowboy alums, he earned their respect pretty quick. What stands out about Dak Prescott to you?
Intangibles.
And people use that word a lot. So what does that mean to you as a former player and a player that knows what it takes to win a Super Bowl?
You don't know. You don't have to ask who the leader of the team is. You just look at the other guys. That was Troy. I mean, our huddle was absolute chaos. I mean, just imagine, back then, they got the communication device, and Troy's got to step out of the huddle to hear everything, mainly because our huddle is chaos. I mean, everybody's yelling at each other. We haven't thrown the ball enough, and Michael's mad, and Emmett's like, no, we should be running the ball all day, right, Nate? Yeah, that's right, Michael. And it's just going back and forth, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe if anybody would have had a microphone in here and hear what goes on inside of our huddle during the course of a game, they'd wonder how we even won. And then Troy would step back into the huddle, and everything stopped. You could hear a pin drop. So we all know who the leader of the team is, and that's who Dak is. And it was funny because the year Tony got hurt and Dak filled in for him and played so well, I was over there probably 2 weeks out of making the decision that they had to make. And I talked to one of the trainers, and I said, how's this going to play out? I said, this is going to be sticky. And he goes, nah, it's actually very easy. I'm like, really?
Was that as shocking to you as it was to me covering it? And when people asked me about that 2016 year, I kept saying I'd covered this team back in 2003, 2004, again in 2010, 13, and then came back for the 2016 season. And I'd never seen a locker room galvanized around a guy that was drafted in the 4th round, 4th on the depth chart. Everyone forgets a guy that ended up on defense, Jamil Showers, was above him at training camp. The way those guys rode for Dak, and you saw it this season. I mean, you really saw the law. I believe that even with some of the injuries, the Cowboys could have had a winning record, in my opinion, even without a lot of their players, if they had just had Dak.
I agree. And that was the defining moment. And the big one is, I mean, we all know how close Jason Witten and Tony Romo were. And the trainer told me, he goes, go ask 82 who he thinks the quarterback should be.
Yep.
And I'm like, come on. He goes, no. He's got this leadership thing that Tony didn't have. And not a lot of people have it. It is very rare, and that's why people say intangibles, because you can't sum it up in one thing. The passion for the game. I always felt like Troy and I were kind of cut from the same cloth. I think our dads were very similar growing up. They were tough, hard to please. His dad might have been a little bit harder to please than mine. But we kind of came from that background, and our motivation wasn't the love of winning. It was that sick feeling of losing, where you just couldn't wait to get back on the field. And I think that'd be one of the first questions I ask people if I was ever to get a front office spot is, what do you like more, winning? Do you prefer the love of winning, or does that sick feeling of losing just drive you? And if you can find the right blend of people there, you've got to have those guys that can't stand to lose. And it doesn't matter what they're doing. There's a great story of Doug Flutie ruining Christmas Day because he cannot let his son win in ping pong. They got a ping pong table for Christmas, and he will not let his son win. That's why Doug Flutie was such a great player, because Doug, he can't lose. I mean, he was underestimated his whole career. And those guys are just driven. And when you meet a guy who has that inside and then has the skill set outside, it's unbelievable. And Dak, that's, Jane just said, he's a 4th round draft pick. He was 4th on the depth chart. His growth is still there. I mean, he scratched the surface. Let's be serious now. He's scratching the surface. But I'm excited to see what he does with Mike McCarthy and the offensive line all intact.
All right, I could literally ask you a million questions, but I don't want to take this away from a lot of you that I know have questions. So we'll just start with you guys raising your hands. Do me a favor, come up to the podium, say your name, and ask a question. So who would like to go first? Come on, don't be shy.
Only takes that first one.
All right, there we go.
Bruce, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
Awesome. 2 questions. First one, I was a big Jason Garrett fan, and I know it just didn't work out. Very competitive for a number of different years, and so can you talk about that departure and what that meant to the organization? And then we also talk about your prep as a player, and then your prep as an announcer, what that looks like.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks,
That's a
man.
great one. Yeah, the Jason Garrett decision was hard for everybody. I'll always remember when the San Francisco 49ers fired Steve Mariucci and then had nobody to hire after that. And the franchise went into a decade spiral of just ineptitude. And John Madden made a great saying. He said, if you're going to do this, you have a press conference to fire the old coach, and the next day you have a press conference to welcome the new coach. You don't go through this whole process of looking for your coach after you fire your head coach. And that's always kind of made sense to me. You know, it happened with Jimmy, and I think that Jerry learned from that. And the fact that Mike McCarthy was out there, I mean, you count your blessings. You know, Mike McCarthy is a heck of a coach, and he's going to get this thing turned around. He's got great young players to work with. So it was hard for Jason to leave. I mean, you're talking about a connection here. You know, he came here in '92, I think. You know, the Cowboys, again, we talk about family. There was a family connection with the Joneses and with the Garretts because of the amount of time that he has spent here and what he's meant to this franchise. The preparation for the game and for broadcasting, for the game, it's, you know, we would laugh a little bit. Sometimes, you know, you hear the cliches, leave no stone unturned. You know, most of our coaching staffs, every stone has been turned over, and we've turned some over twice. And the haze in the barn is not something that they refer to. There's always an opportunity to maybe learn something or get better. So sometimes I felt that we were, you know, trying to push it a little bit too far, and we were over preparing because we were good at what we did. And for us, it was, here's what we're going to do. We're going to challenge you to stop us. If you're going to put 8 guys down in the box to stop Emmett, we're going to throw the ball. If you're going to leave 7 in the box because you're worried about your matchup on the back end, we're going to run the football. It was basically that simple. It's a real numbers game. And we just felt that we matched up really well with everybody. And we had great players to be able to execute that philosophy. So when I get into broadcasting, I was kind of the same way. I knew the one thing I didn't want to do was say stuff on a Sunday that people probably would have read on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. Don't give them information that's already out there. You know, you need to, again, give them the how and the why and be in the moment. We always try to keep pace with the game. Anybody that says that, you know, I know everybody thinks Tony Romo's ahead of the game. Troy Aikman can do that if you want him to. But it's a different style and it's a different generation, but Troy is old school and there's respect about the way that John Madden did things and the dynamic between your play-by-play guy and the commentator. Troy can tell you where the ball's going. Trust me. You know, it's not unique to Tony Romo, but he does a great job with that.
How would that have been received in a production meeting?
Ooh,
because I've heard some, you know, some teams have struggled with him coming into production meetings and telling them how he thinks their offense is going to run. How would you have received that?
All right. Well, since you have all the answers, I guess we're done. And I walked out. Yeah, it would be hard, and that's the thing. I enjoy the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most flattering things that I ever received was the PR guy from San Diego. We sat with Phillip Rivers. They had to come get Phillip for his meeting, and we talked to him for 30 minutes, and it was the most enjoyable conversation. I learned football from Phillip Rivers when we spoke. I mean, he's a great communicator, and he's crazy smart. And he's so much fun to sit and talk with. And when he left, the PR guy came back in and he's like, I've never seen anything like that before. He goes, that was like such a good conversation, wasn't it? And I'm like, oh my God, that was fantastic, right? We could have sat here for an hour. And those are the things that I love. I want to learn from them. I don't want them to feel like I've got all the answers, because nobody has all the answers. And the game changes so much from week to week. And it's just, you know, we try to catch up to it and then stay right behind it. But one of the things I did realize when I was just starting out is I was over-prepared. And I would overthink. And I would start to think I knew what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden that's not happening, and I can't shift to find out what's going on and be able to tell you the how and the why. And one of the greatest examples I have for you is we were doing college football games at Fox when we had the BCS. And it was Utah versus Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. And we went to Utah's practice, and we went to Alabama's practice. And now, Utah had some good players. They had Sean Smith at the corner. You know, Alex had already left there, but there was a couple first-round draft picks, and you know, a lot of guys in 2 through 6. It was a good team. But then you went to Alabama, and it's just like a machine, and they're coming out, and the offensive line is the same guy, and the linebackers are the same guy. There was probably 5 first-round picks on that team, and you're just like, oh, Alabama is going to destroy these guys. If we could bet on games, I would have been homeless the next day. It's 21-0 Utah in the first quarter, because we thought we knew exactly what was going to happen. And I had a friend of mine, Jim Hoffer, who was my running back coach at Syracuse, and for some reason Jim was not working that year. Shame on everybody in the football industry. So he came with us, and I'm like, Jim, what is happening? He goes, I told you at the start of the game, the left tackle, Andre Smith, got caught talking to an agent. He got suspended, and instead of plugging in a left tackle, they moved everybody left. Left guard went to left tackle, center went to left guard went to center, right tackle went to right guard, and they plugged in a right tackle. So now it's just chaos. And the guy coming off the edge for Utah, Paul, he went to Baltimore, first-round pick. He destroyed both of their tackles because one's out of position, never played it, and the other one is a backup. So you get so caught up in what you think, you miss the most obvious thing in the world. And it's something that you knew coming into the game. It should have been something I had my eyes on the whole time. So I learned that there's a very fine line between being prepared and being over-prepared, where you don't see what's happening with the game. You've got to be able to adjust what's happening that day to be able to share your insights with the viewers.
People don't realize, when I did my first national game for CBS on the sidelines, it was Andrew Luck's first game back, playing for the Colts after the injury. They were playing Cincinnati, and I had prepped so much because I thought, oh, Indianapolis is going to come out here. It's his first game back. Cincinnati won that game. That was when Andy Dalton obviously was the quarterback. And there is something like in live real time when you're down on the sidelines and you're like, I've over-prepared, but I didn't prepare for this outcome.
Yes.
That is so unsettling. And I don't think people realize when it's live TV and you, to your point, it's almost, it was one of the worst feelings of my broadcasting career. But sometimes you do. You literally over-prepare for one outcome and you didn't think of the other.
Exactly.
That's always fun.
And you do that once.
Yeah, and you don't do it again?
It happens once.
Nope. Who else has got a question? I know you guys are, there we go. Let's go right to you.
Hi.
How you doing?
Nice to meet you tonight. Thank you for coming out. My dad is my hero, and he told me that the thing that he loved about you the most was the heart that you had for the game and the toughness of your play. And so I wanted to say that I appreciated you as a figure and how you sacrificed for the team. And so say thank you for that. And my question to you is more on a personal level. It's just, what are your passions outside of the game?
Well, thank you for the compliment.
Do you have time for passions outside the game?
Yeah, I got yelled at. So there's a great facility here called the Center for Brain Health, and with everything that was going on during the concussion stuff and the nature of my business, for me it's like having a colonoscopy. I go every 3 to 5 years just to make sure I'm not digressing in any way. That's one of the biggest things there was the doctor who does the evaluation, do all these tests, and I said it was a 2.5 to 3 hour test, and I said, is it normal to have a headache right now? And he said, absolutely. You should have a headache. He goes, that's very taxing, on your brain. It makes you really think. He goes, but the big thing is we all do that in our day-to-day practice, right? We're doing it at work. We're doing it with our family. We are taxing our brain and we're stressing it. We're pressing it. And so you will get headaches from time to time, and that's why you need a release. You need to have something to do. Yeah. So what are you passionate about? What's your break? I said exercise. He goes, nope, nope. He goes, that's work. He goes, that's work. He goes, you got to have something that's your escape. And I didn't have an answer for him. I did not have an answer for him. And it's something that it bothers me as a dad because I don't have that with my kids. I don't have the hunting stories. I don't have golf on Christmas Eve day. You know, there's so many traditions that you could have established if you find that passion. So it's something I'm still in the process of doing because there's still time to establish that tradition with my son and my daughter. But it's frustrating that I can't find one, and I don't know what it is. You know, maybe you're just a jack of all trades and a master of none when it comes to hobbies. But yeah, God, he was not happy with me. And I've seen him since then. He goes, do you have a hobby yet? And I'm like, I don't. And he's just like, golf? And I'm like, I don't have time. He goes, that's the point of a hobby. You make time. You make time for the hobby. So I'm working on it, and I'm getting better. I'm getting closer. But yeah, I gotta get something.
As someone who's a terrible golfer, I would tell you, I don't know if golfing helps your brain either, though, Daryl.
Yeah.
I find it very mentally taxing.
I just don't think a football player's mentality crosses over to the game of golf very well.
Does Troy play?
Troy's pretty good. Yeah,
really?
Troy's one of those guys. He's just frustrating. He's good at everything he does. You know, so Troy and I played golf. We were the same guy. We were 14 handicaps. Didn't hit woods off the tee because we couldn't hit them. And I didn't play with him for like 7 months. And we go to a golf course. We're going to play a round of golf. The first hole's a par 5. He goes driver 2-iron to 8 feet for an eagle. And I'm like, all right, what have you been doing for the last 7 months? He's the same
guy I see out on Katy Trail who's running literally a 7-minute mile.
Yeah.
Like he's a beast.
Yeah, and he stays in touch with everybody. He's just one of those people that tries. Why do you have more time than I do? I don't understand. Time is a constant. How do you have more than I do?
And I feel like once his daughters go off to college, it's going to get even worse, right?
Exactly.
Because I feel like that's his hobby is his girls. I know there's more questions in the audience. Let's go over to the right side of the room.
Not sure it was me, but I'm going to jump up here.
I like it.
Thanks for being here. So I'm going to take you back to 1993. Emmett holds out for the first 2 games of the year. You have Lincoln Coleman, I think Thomas Agee maybe, and you've talked about how your fortunes somewhat were linked with Emmett. So what are you thinking? What's the offensive line thinking during that holdout? I know it was a very different time in free agency, very different time in contracting.
Yeah.
But what are you thinking when he's holding out and you're sitting there? And I think you went on to make the Pro Bowl that year, but your future's kind of in the balance here as this guy is holding out. So we've had some recent holdouts here, but wondering what your thoughts were, what the offensive line thoughts were back in 1993.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a reality check for a lot of people at the top of the organization at that time. And everybody plays hardball with you when you go in to do contracts. That was a different style of business in the NFL. So that's pre-free agency. So you're dealing with your club and your club only. And basically what it is the threat of a holdout. You know, I had done it, and you know, I told all, you know, hey, I'll see you. I'm not coming back until after July 27th. And well, what? Peter Gabriel's playing on the 27th, and I'm not coming to training camp until I go see Peter Gabriel. And you know, Stephen Jones called me and he gave me the ultimatum of, you got a 1-year contract. We want to see you prove it one more time. So that's it. And I'm like, really? That's all the negotiating? He goes, yeah, we need you here. We need you here tomorrow. Can I at least have till Monday? I told everybody I wasn't coming back till like the 27th. You know, this is not going to look good for me. So I mean, that was how business was. You're either going to hold out, and I didn't have the clout to hold out. Emmett had the clout to hold out, and we were always happy for the guys. We knew it was a tough decision on them, but you only get one shot at a big contract that's going to change your life. And so when they're in the middle of the holdout, you're with them for other reasons. You miss them, but you're never angry at them. Now, when you start out 0-2, and it takes Charles Haley putting his helmet through the wall inside the locker room and telling Jerry, 22 better be here Monday morning or this season's going to slip away from us. And that's one of the things that I've grown to accept is the philosophy of the window. I was never a big window guy. hey, there's a window for us to win championships here. I think it happens more in free agency, but even back then, we had a window, and we did a really, really good job of getting through that window and getting 3 and 4 years. And if we don't have a car accident with Eric Williams, and if Jimmy Johnson doesn't leave, we might get 5 and 5 years. We took advantage of the window, and that's, I think, was Charles's message is there's an opportunity here, and you guys are squabbling it away because you can't get on the same page over money. How can we be doing this about money? And I think it just got a lot of people's attention. And Emmett came in, and we became the first team to start out 0-2 and win a Super Bowl. But boy, does that puts a ton of pressure on you. I mean, you have no room for error the rest of the season. And we went 12-2 the rest of the year. So it was a strange situation, but from a player's perspective, you're happy for him because you know this is a life-changing experience he's going through, and you know how bad he wants to be there with you, but he's got to do the right thing for him and his family.
Who else has a question?
Todd Hadfield. So obviously you hit a lot of linebackers in your day, blocking for Emmett. What was the hardest hit you've received? And also kind of a double-edged question, was there ever an ongoing rivalry between you and some teams that you played as a middle linebacker?
It's funny because it's different. The hardest hits are positions you wouldn't expect. They're usually secondary guys, and they usually catch you when you don't see them. So if I gave you my top 3, unfortunately, number 3 is someone who we just lost last fall, far too early, Marcus Paul, the strength coach for the Cowboys, was a teammate of mine at Syracuse. And he was the first big, rangy free safety. 6'3", 215 pounds. And God, could he hit. And we're at spring football. And he hit me, and I call it, the circuit board goes out. I mean, everything shuts down for a second. And then you kind of wake back up. And I woke up to Marcus's big smile. And he just said, I got you good on that one, didn't I? Number 2 would be Chuck Cecil from Green Bay. 185 pounds, soaking wet. I still don't know where he generated that force. But same thing, circuit board shut down, and the football is laying right there. And I'm like, get the football. Get the football. And my arm is like, I'm not back on yet. Everything else is running, but we're not back on yet. And then the last one you'll know, Ronnie Lott. Ronnie hit me one of the few times I got to carry the football, and it is true. You knew where 42 was. You always knew where 42 was, and so I'm carrying the ball and I'm dragging people because it's. I don't get to do this very often, and all of a sudden I see 42, and I'm like, oh my God, get down! And he just, bam! And my God, I mean, everything went down, and I just went, and I'm laying there, and John Giesig is over top of me. He's like, come on, you got to get up. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if my shoulder's separated or my arm is broken, but I can't get up. He goes, Ronnie's still down. You have to get up. And I look over, and Ronnie's still down. And it was like one of those stupid Rocky movies, where like, gonna beat you. And there's a, I don't know if it was a photograph or if it was just on the broadcast, but I'm on the sideline and I've got my collar and I've got my head down and they're massaging like all this heat cream into me, and you can't see my head. And somebody said he got hit so hard his head is inside of his body and they're trying to pull it out. So those are the hardest hits, but the most physical guy I played against during the course of a game plan, and this was just, Norv, for some reason Norv wanted to get really basic against the Arizona Cardinals, and we're just going to run lead, and we're going to run inside all day, and Eric Hill happened to be the middle linebacker, and Eric Hill was the original Ray Lewis. 6'3", 255 pounds, 4'4", 540, never left the field. Jay Novacek came in one time, he goes, hey, if you're crossing the field, he goes, find 58. I'm like, what, you're going to tell me that? I'm way ahead of you. I steer clear of him as much as I can. But we would literally just run lead draw, and it would just be the two of us running straight at each other from 8 yards apart. And I would vote for him in the Pro Bowl every year, and our offensive line would. Why do you vote for Eric every year? I said, the better question is, why don't you guys vote for him every year? We think there's better inside linebackers. I said, yeah, because you guys weigh 330 pounds and you're double teaming up to him, all right? I'm the guy that's got to take him on individually in the hole. And to me, it's one of the biggest oversights in the game. He played for an Arizona team that's out in the desert and doesn't have a big fan base. If Eric Hill played in a big market, you'd all know his name. I mean, he was unbelievable. Seth Joyner was great. Carl Banks. I don't think I ever moved Carl Banks more than an inch. Played against Lawrence Taylor. Thank God Norv had the great idea of when you got somebody that good, you always want to run at him. Fantastic, Norv. Let's go. Let's go run. Let's go run right at that really, really good guy. There was the NFC East was, I mean, Kurt Gouveia inside, Chris Spielman with the Lions. I mean, the middle linebackers at that time, it was unbelievable. And this is one of the funny things. So I hurt my neck. 2 weeks later, Spielman goes out. 2 weeks later, Gouveia goes out. And the next year, Eric Hill goes out, all with the same neck injuries. I mean, it was like for 5 years, we were just like battering rams with each other. So eventually, something's got to give.
I always love the recall, the transparency, the vulnerability in story time with you guys. How much did you guys appreciate it? I know I certainly learned something. Thank you. I literally could do this another hour with you, but we do have to wrap this up. I do want to thank the Tower Club, Insperity, and of course Thuzio for asking me to be a part of this and for bringing you here to the stage. You were an awesome audience. Love seeing your faces and having your energy again, and we hope that we see you next month. September 13th, we've got Jalen Smith from the Dallas Cowboys here. So I hope to see you guys then. Again, another round of applause for Daryl. Awesome job. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.